Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to do a code review of weather app. I know weather apps are very common, but still I think you could get a lot of it me going through it, because you'll see my point of view and how I approach doing code reviews. So let's jump straight into the code. Alright, so I got this idea. I'm going to write in points what I would change in this file. So let's start from package.json, and let's see, it's a Vite based and it's very good. You very often see that beginners still use create React app, which is no longer recommended. Even by the React team, they recommend using next.js, if I'm not mistaken, or Remix, but still Vite is a very good option. Okay, so what I can see here is Axios. I'm not a big fan of Axios. I think the fetch API is very good, and I would stay and use fetch API maybe with some wrapper of your own, but not Axios, and we'll get into that later. And let's look further. Slint, Vite. Okay, so that's cool. Let's see at Vite config. Is there anything? No, it's normal, I would say. Okay. So let's get into main.js. It's a very small application, I want to say it, because it's gonna be a short video, I guess, because it's only 2 files that probably I'm gonna have to say something about, but still. Okay, and slint CJS, that's cool. Plugins, only export components with warn. Okay. So first of all, I don't even have to go to the files to write what I would change first in this project, and this is to add TypeScript. TypeScript these days is so fundamental, and you will rarely see the application that uses pure JavaScript. That's because TypeScript is more reliable and it's actually faster to use in the long run. Okay, let's jump into app.jsx, where the whole logic belongs. Alright, we've got some local state, we've got some data, we've got input, we've got ref. Okay, so without looking any further, I can say that current focus, get data. Okay, I get it. So you have 2 approaches. Either you use ref and get the data from the input, for example in the submit function, by getting the input from the HTML element, or either you are using your local state, React state, and you are making a controlled input with onChange, because probably now, yeah, okay, so that's weird. So he is changing the city name, so he is actually making this input a controlled input because he's passing a value and an onChange function, but at the same time he's using the ref, and that's probably for the focus. And I guess that's all right, but what we got here, get data is a missing dependency. All right, I don't know why he didn't put it here, but it probably should be here, but we'll get to it. Okay, actually, you know what, let's try to run this up. npm run dev, I guess, or run dev. All right, we've got this app exposed here. I'm gonna open it in a window. Let's see how it looks. All right, let's say I want to check weather in San Francisco. All right, it works. You can say it works. Let's get back to the code. All right, so what I would change in the first place is probably the styles. As you can see here, he's using a BAM methodology as far as I can see. But it's not necessary these days with modules and with modern libraries, I would say. For example, like Tailwind CSS, which I recommend, and I will be recommending in every video because it's great. And when I see someone struggling and not using it, then I really recommend it. So my second point would be to use CSS modules or Tailwind CSS. So you may not know what CSS modules, let me change that, modules are. So CSS modules are the special files where you can abstract the styles and they will be used only in component you want to be them used to inside. So for example, you wouldn't have to create weather main, weather form. Actually here he would just use main and form, but if he made such a file and use this class in the other component, the styles would be applied too, and we don't want it. So we can import this module only inside the component. It's really helpful, and yeah, these days you probably don't see using this methodology to class names. All right, let's see. It's a form. It has unsubmit. It's a good thing because you often see like people don't use forms. They use just div and add on click to the button. And it's a bad practice because when there is no form, I cannot use enter to submit it. And it's very good for accessibility and feeling of the app. Okay. What do we got here? All right. Data main. Okay. Okay, let's see add this function get data. So I'm pretty sure it shouldn't be kept inside your component. You should have something like, I don't know, let's say it's gonna be API directory, and you're gonna have weather.api.js, and we're gonna move this function outside of this component. We're gonna export it. We're gonna import Axios, but actually there's no really reason to use Axios because you can just make it an async function and use fetch API. So yeah, it will be my third point. Don't use Axios, use fetch API because it's good. But you know, I would have to pass the URL here, but let's say I will just take it from here. You wouldn't really do that. You would have some basic URL, base URL, and then you would append this string to it. Okay, it gets an city name. Okay, so you know what? I'm not gonna change it now. I don't want this video to be too long, but I guess you got my point. I would just move it to the API directory. Then we've got this use effect, which is okay for focusing the input, but in terms of fetching data, you have some better options as for now. So I know it's a really small project, but I guess it's for learning purposes. So I would still use something like a React query. I know it's a very, very big library for such for such a thing like one API call or maybe a few, but still this library is great. I recommend it every time, and I've got actually my first video on this channel is about this library. So you know, it's quite heavy. So, and I know it's a small app, but I guess if it is for learning purposes, why not use libraries that are being used in production applications? And we've got this submit handler. So also, personally, I would move this whole. So my fourth point is gonna be move logic outside of component to custom hook. So I consider it a good practice to use custom hooks. For example, let's call it use weather. Oh, without these curly braces. And I would move all of my state, also this ref would be moved to this hook, and we would move this use effect, this submit handler. This hook would return all of the stuff that component needs, and by doing so, you could have less logic inside of component, which is, in my opinion, considered a good practice, and the component would be more readable, clear, and we want it. We want it as a developers, especially as our application grows. Okay, let's see how it looks here. cd.name. Alright, so in situations like this, I prefer to use this syntax. I don't know what lies behind this main, but I guess it's some kind of object, so you can easily use this and also with weather the same thing. You can just simply use this one. It's not recommended when the thing under, for example, weather could be array, because empty array is still considered true value. You can actually pretty easy check that. If we go here, go to inspect, console, and how can I check it actually? What gonna equals true, and it's false. So maybe my misunderstanding. Okay, so coming back to my example, as you can see here, it's an empty array. We use AND operator and then console log, and it's still being console logged. So you really have to be careful when you use the empty array, when the empty array is under the value. And the same here applies here, I guess. Okay, and now let's see about it. The data.weather. Okay, so he's using icons from the Open Weather Map API.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
I hope you didn't hear the Siri. I'm really sorry if you did. Okay, and what else? The same here, the same thing here. Okay, I see a lot of data.main. Data.name, data.main. Okay, so what I would do, of course, we would have to have types here. Actually, it's a JSX, it's a JavaScript, you wouldn't have to, but consider it. I would recommend doing this app in TypeScript. I would destructure main and name from data. So somewhere over here, response.data. Right, so here's our data, and for example, somewhere over here, let's say I will use, right, something like this, and name and main, and use it like that, because it's just shorter. Okay, so I guess it's a whole app covered. So definitely styles to be changed into, in my opinion, table in CSS, because it's great. These operators, I would change it to the AND operators, and all of the places where the underlying value is not array. And actually that's it, I guess. So that will be all for today's video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.